I've been contacted by a reader this week who has driven into a pothole and caused damage to his car. And he asks me, can I now make a claim for the damage? Now, the answer generally is yes. And that claim would be against whoever is responsible for that particular road, which will be either the local council or the highways agency. By the way, for the rest of this video, I'll just refer to them as the local authority, but you do need to find out which one it is. And as I say, generally they would be responsible for the claim, but there are occasions, unfortunately many occasions, when they can wriggle out of claims. And for this reason, these claims, these pothole claims, can be very tricky. So it's very important that you understand the law that underpins the responsibility of the local authority and the evidence that you will need in order to navigate a successful claim. Now, the law in question is the Highways Act 1980, and it sets out a duty of care for the local authority to maintain roads, to make sure they are safe to pass, to make sure they will not cause personal injury to anyone, and to make sure they will not cause damage to anyone's property, i.e. pothole damage when you drive down one of these craters, as many of them are, with your car. But unfortunately, the Highways Act also provides a defence, and it's in what's called Section 58 of the Highways Act, which is entitled Special Defence, i.e. this is the excuse your local authority can wheel out in order to avoid paying out a claim. And basically what it says is that if the local authority can show that it took all reasonable measures to keep the road safe, it took all measures to provide safety reports and to do ongoing maintenance, then in those circumstances it can deny a claim and refuse to pay for the damage caused to your vehicle. So again, because of this, it's really important that you do your homework and you find out everything there is to know about the particular pothole in question. And for this reason, these claims are not straightforward. You can't make one of these claims in 5 minutes. You've got to do your homework first. So here's the steps that I say you need to take. Step number 1 is you need to go to the local authority and you need to ask lots of questions. Now, under the Freedom of Information Act 2000 and the Environmental Information Regulations 2004, you and me are entitled to ask for all of the information that the local authorities have in relation to a particular road. And that includes any safety reports and inspections that have been carried out and compiled in relation to that particular road and perhaps in relation to the particular pothole that you drove down. So that's what you need to do first. Ask under a Freedom of Information request for that information. Now, my advice is you ask for the following particular pieces of information. And the first is details of all safety inspections undertaken on that particular road in the preceding 2 years. That is the 2 years prior to the date that you drove down the pothole. The next question is you want details of all defects that have been identified on this particular road during the previous 2 years. Next, you want to know what safety inspections have been carried out, what inspections have been undertaken during the last 2 years in relation to that particular stretch of road. And you also want to know how often do these inspections take place? What's the frequency? Because by asking these questions, you've now found out what do they do, what's their rolling program for checking the road, and what have they actually done in the last 2 years. Now, the next question, this probably is one of the most important questions, is what other complaints have they received or inquiries, use both words, complaints stroke inquiries, because it makes it wider, have they received in relation to this particular piece of road over the last 2 years? Because what that ought to do, that ought to show you who else has made a pothole claim. And it ought to show you how big a problem have potholes been on this particular stretch of road. And lastly, you want to ask, what's your plan? How do you deal with potholes? How often do you fix them? When someone comes to you and says there is a pothole in the claim, what's your process for repairing them? Maybe it's a temporary repair first, followed by a permanent repair later. What's the deal? What do you do? These are all the questions that you want to ask. Now, on the screen now, there is a link. And if you click on that link, you will find a document that sets out what is expected of the local authorities in relation to maintenance of roads, ongoing maintenance, and what they need to do. And what you want to do is compare the two, compare what they're supposed to do with what you've asked them, because that will give you a good idea if they are complying with the duty of care that they have under the Highways Act. Now, the other thing you can do is, I've said you should ask for copies of safety reports on safety inspections. Maybe they'll wriggle out of that. Maybe they won't give them to you. So the other thing you can do is to go to a website, which is www.fixmystreet.com. This does not always give the answer, but sometimes this website will have safety inspections and reports on there for the particular road that you're looking at. And if they do, there's a quick way of getting it. So have a look on there as well. Now, the next step to do or to take is to look at the evidence that you can gather without asking someone else. And that basically means, number one, photographs. Take lots of photographs of the pothole in question. Do it from different angles. Also, if it's safe to do so, put a ruler in the pothole or something else which will show in a photograph how deep and how wide the pothole is. By doing this, you're showing the extent of the problem. The other thing you want to do is draw a plan of the road, plotting precisely where in the road the pothole is. Is it close to the curb? Is it in the middle of the road? Where exactly is it? And the other thing you can do here is to go on Google Earth and try and find the particular road and zoom in and see if the last image on Google Earth shows the pothole in question. If it does, that will be even better evidence than your diagram you would have drawn, because it will show you precisely where it is. Again, won't always help, but if it does, it's really good evidence to have. You also want to take pictures of the damage to the vehicle, showing exactly what's happened, what the extent is. And of course, you want to go and get some quotes for the repair so you know how much to ask for when you make your claim. Now, armed with all of these things, you now have enough evidence to decide and to review to decide if this local authority can use what I told you was called the Section 58 defence. Does the evidence show that in fact the council did take all reasonable measures, as the law says, to keep the road maintained, to keep it safe? Or does it show a picture of a council consistently ignoring claims or complaints about potholes, ignoring its duty of care, and failing on enough occasions to go out and inspect the roads? I can tell you on many occasions the answer to that question is going to be yes. But if you don't do all of this homework, the council or the local authority will simply say, we've done all we can, we've taken all reasonable measures, therefore we don't have to pay out. And of course, if you've not checked it, you may just take their word for it. That's why due diligence, i.e. looking at all this information, is really important. Now, armed with all of this, if you decide that you do have a claim because the council has been negligent in failing to abide by its duty of care, then go to the local authority, ask them the procedure for making a pothole claim to them, and send all of this information along with a narrative of what happened, i.e. on this day, at this time, on this road, I drove my vehicle, which is a XYZ, and I went down the pothole causing this damage, and then explaining the evidence and information that you've got. If you take all these steps, you'll have a much better chance of making a successful pothole claim.